By 1942, Allied infantry faced a brutal truth. Rifles bounced off tank armor, and bulky anti-tank guns were too slow to save them. Then came a 54-inch steel tube that made ordinary soldiers a tank's worst nightmare. It turned the tide with one trigger pull. But how did this simple invention, mocked for its bizarre name, become the greatest equalizer on the battlefield? The answer begins on the edge of defeat. Infantrymen pressed themselves into muddy foxholes as steel beasts rolled closer. Tank treads chewed through barbed wire and hedgerows, grinding the earth with a sound that drowned out shouted orders. Rifle fire pinged harmlessly off thick armor, bullets sparking and flattening against steel plates. Even machine gun bursts did little more than scratch the paint. For a soldier with only a bolt-action rifle or a carbine, the sight of a Panzer III or a lumbering Italian M13 was a death sentence. Attempts to stop these armored giants with grenades or Molotov cocktails required suicidal bravery, closing the distance under withering machine gun fire, hoping to find a weak spot. The only real anti-tank weapons available were heavy, crew-served guns. These 37mm or 57mm cannons demanded a team of men to haul them into position, often with a truck, and precious minutes to set up. Tanks rarely waited. By the time a gun was ready, the enemy had already advanced or changed direction, leaving the crew exposed and vulnerable. Reports from North Africa told of entire infantry squads scattering in panic, forced to abandon positions as tanks advanced unchecked. One after-action account described riflemen firing point-blank at a Panzer III, only to watch every round bounce away. The armor was up to 2 inches thick, far beyond what any small arm could penetrate. In these moments, the battlefield belonged to the tank. Every soldier understood that, without a new answer, the next encounter could be their last. The sense of helplessness was total, and it spread through the ranks with every grinding approach of enemy armor. Army planners gathered reports from the front and tallied the odds. Tank assaults were breaking through infantry lines, not because of superior numbers, but because no one on foot could stop them. Heavy anti-tank guns, with their thick wheels and long barrels, were powerful in theory, but useless if they could not be dragged to the right place in time. Trucks bogged down in mud or drew enemy fire, and setting up a gun required a crew to expose themselves, often for nothing, as armored columns simply bypassed or overran static positions. Commanders demanded something different, a weapon that could be carried by 2 men, moved quickly across rough terrain, and fired from a foxhole or behind rubble. It had to be light enough for a single squad to bring along, but strong enough to punch through armor that shrugged off every rifle and grenade. The requirements were simple on paper, but daunting in practice. The weapon needed to be portable, simple to operate, and deadly at close range. It could not rely on complex mechanisms or fragile parts, since frontline conditions chewed up anything delicate. Ammunition had to be compact and safe to handle, with enough explosive force to make a difference. The 2-man team was not just a matter of convenience, it was a necessity. One soldier would focus on aiming and firing, while the other would load the weapon and watch for hazards, especially the dangerous backblast that could injure anyone standing too close behind. These demands shaped every conversation in ordnance offices and design shops. The search was on for a solution that could transform desperate infantrymen into tank hunters, armed with something they could carry on their backs and trust in the chaos of battle. Colonel Leslie Skinner spent his early years fascinated by rockets, long before the war made them urgent. By 1939, stationed at Aberdeen Proving Ground, he teamed up with Dr. Clarence Hickman, a physicist who had experimented with solid fuel rockets during World War I. Hickman believed a rocket could carry a powerful warhead without the weight of a gun barrel. Skinner was convinced that the answer to the infantry's tank problem might lie in combining a shaped charge grenade with a simple launch tube. The real breakthrough came not from a boardroom, but from a scrap pile. Lieutenant Edward Uhl, an engineer under Skinner, was handed a shaped charge grenade and told to figure out how to launch it. UHL later recalled walking past a heap of discarded metal, spotting a section of tube that happened to be just the right size. He carried it back, fitted it to the grenade, and with a little improvisation, created the first prototype of what would become the bazooka. UHL's story became legend. Put the tube on a soldier's shoulder, load the rocket inside, and away it goes. Initial tests were rough. Early rockets fizzled or veered off course, but the shape charge worked, punching through steel plate in a way no rifle could. In May 1942, at Aberdeen, Skinner and Hickman demonstrated their invention for Army brass. The prototype, still rough around the edges, stunned the generals by punching through armored targets. The response was immediate. 5,000 launchers were ordered on the spot, and production contracts were signed within days. A weapon born from wartime urgency and a trio of determined inventors was about to change the battlefield forever. A steel tube, just over 4 feet long, weighing about 13 pounds. At first glance, the bazooka looked almost too simple for the job. But every part served a purpose. The tube acted as both launcher and aiming guide, channeling the force of a small rocket. The rocket itself measured 2.36 inches in diameter and carried a shape-charged warhead, a technology that changed the rules of armored warfare. Rather than blasting through with raw explosive power, the shape charge used the Monroe effect, a cone-shaped cavity lined with copper and packed with high explosive. When the rocket struck armor, the explosive detonated inward, collapsing the copper liner into a jet of molten metal. That jet, moving at over 8,000 meters per second, could punch through 3 to 4 inches of steel, enough to defeat the armor of a Panzer III or an Italian M13 at typical combat ranges. The firing system was equally straightforward. A two-man team loaded the rocket from the rear, sliding it into the tube until contacts met the electrical circuit. The gunner squeezed a magneto trigger, sending a current down a wire to ignite the rocket propellant. With a sharp hiss and a burst of smoke, the rocket left the tube at about 265 feet per second. 6 stabilizing fins snapped open, keeping the projectile steady in flight. The effective range was roughly 120 yards against a moving target, close enough to demand steady nerves, but far enough to give infantry a fighting chance. Backblast was a real hazard. Hot gases shot out from the rear like a jet engine, threatening anyone standing behind. That is why the loader's job included not just reloading, but also warning others to stay clear. The combination of simple engineering and advanced explosives turned the bazooka into the first truly portable anti-tank weapon, giving infantrymen the means to fight back against steel monsters. Operation Torch in North Africa brought the bazooka straight into battle, and with it, a new set of dangers and lessons. Bazooka teams moved in pairs, one man steadying the tube on his shoulder, the other loading the rocket and scanning for threats. The loader's job was more than just reloading. He had to warn everyone to stay at least 15 meters behind. Early after-action reports describe men burned or even knocked down by the rocket's backblast, especially when firing from trenches or near walls. The warning became doctrine: never fire with anyone behind, and always clear the rear. In the chaos of combat, this rule saved lives. The bazooka's reach went beyond tanks. Infantry in the Pacific found it could blast bunkers and pillboxes, giving them a fighting chance against fortified positions. Each shot was a team effort, and every mistake carried a cost. Captured bazookas in North Africa did not just surprise German engineers, they inspired them. By 1943, German teams had reverse-engineered the American launcher into the Panzer Schreck, a heavier weapon firing an 88mm rocket that could pierce more than 100mm of armor. The Panzer Schreck's larger warhead and improved shield made it even more dangerous to Allied tanks, a rare case of the enemy taking an Allied idea and making it more lethal. Meanwhile, the name bazooka, borrowed from Bob Burns' oddball musical horn, outlived its inventor and its era. It entered everyday speech as shorthand for anything powerful, and it became attached to new generations of rocket launchers. The Super Bazooka, developed after the war, took the same simple tube and scaled it up to face Soviet tanks in Korea. Decades later, the basic idea still echoes in modern anti-tank weapons, a testament to a design that changed battlefields and language alike. Today, a single soldier can still turn the tide with a shoulder-fired rocket. The principle behind that 13-pound steel tube endures. Every modern battlefield owes its shape to this invention. When high-tech armor meets simple ingenuity, it is never just history. It is the next shot that counts. Thanks for watching.